Hey there, fellas and curious minds. Welcome back to our channel, where we dive into the vast and captivating world of the internet's most intriguing discussions, heartwarming stories, hilarious memes, and everything in between. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you'll never miss a moment of goodness we have in store for you. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into this week's top videos. What's the most denial you've ever seen someone in? Story 1. My parents, on two fronts. For some background, my parents are abusive jerkwads. I've had almost no contact with them for years, and my life is better for it. And I'm a much better person without their trash hanging over me. Last year, they fell in with a money-forwarding scammer. I haven't heard the entirety of this story, but it involved promises of tens of millions of dollars for a small outlay on their part. Of course, they lost their small outlay, which was in the tens of thousands. Apparently, most of this I'm repeating secondhand from a cousin who keeps an eye out for anything weird for them, so I'm prepared. They then realized this person was scamming them and have been working tirelessly at trying to out-scam the scammer and achieve access to his tens of millions, without the slightest thought that the tens of millions doesn't exist. Then, they tried to reestablish contact with me. They didn't mention anything about the money at the time, but added the usual bizarre restrictions on us meeting face-to-face. I would wear certain clothes, my girlfriend would wear a correct hairstyle and clothing, etc., and behave a certain way. All the usual stuff they used to pull on me when growing up. Soon after that, when I found out about their money issues, they tried a second time to reestablish contact, along with demands for cash and asking who owned the house I was living in so they could use it as collateral for a small business issue. I told them to take off. The most recent news I have, as of last month, is they've not only lost the family home and an investment property I was unaware of, but they're up to their eyeballs in debt, have borrowed metric tons from friends and other family, all going towards this scammer in an attempt to get their money back. Their total debt is now well over $400,000. If I were to sum up the source of their problems when I was growing up, is that they're total control freaks. And if anything or anyone steps out of their decided control arena, they will sacrifice everything to get them back in. Their denial is complete in that they still think they have a hope of returning their money, and on the second front, in that they believe I'll help them throw more at the problem. Asking who owned the house I was living in so they could use it as collateral for a small business issue? Wow. That's just grifting 101. It can be boiled down to, hey, I will promise you this big thing if you just give me this small thing now. There never is a big thing. Not later, not ever. They're just trying to get you to give them the small thing. Story 2. I in HR had to let an employee go due to poor performance and shoddy workmanship. The guy was one of those know-it-alls that in actuality only knew enough to make him dangerous. I had been watching the guy on the assembly line, keeping an ongoing list of royal mess-ups he made on a day-to-day basis. We suddenly had product that was shipped to a distributor, and a component was incorrectly built and shipped with this guy's signature all over the paperwork. I had to sit down the entire team and have a heart-to-heart, yelling, about what had happened. During the meeting, without him knowing we had been watching him for weeks, and the mess-up he made was the last straw, this jerkwad decides to start throwing all his coworkers under the bus because he knows what he's doing, and obviously there's an issue with the rest of these folks. Well, flash forward to the following Monday, and I call him into the HR office, and we explain that we are going to be letting him go, and this is the reasoning, etc. Eyes bigger than saucers, and proceeds to tell us our company does not know how to run a business and he's only been a benefit since he started. Keep in mind, this guy had worked for us for around 8 months. He was the ripe old age of 22, and this company has been around 20-plus profitable years with 0 assembly issues, until the last 8 months or so. So I had to escort him out of the building after he signed some paperwork, and he argues with me all the way to the parking lot that we are making a big mistake. He should be in charge. Well, I'm sure this guy is still walking around denying the fact that he is a jerkwad, and we have not had assembly issues since that day. Cheers! I fired about 8 people in my 12 years at my job. Half of them were exactly this way. The other half just shrugged and knew they had messed up. I worked with someone like this. I was working this job at an ad agency as a temp, and they brought in this other temp to come in, and this person just started acting like they were my superior. I had to go to my bosses and say, "Is this person hired to give me orders?" And they said, "No, what are you talking about?" That person didn't last that long after that. Story 3. Hope this applies, but I volunteer as an EMT. This one shift, we got a call about a pungent smell coming from an elderly couple's apartment. Dispatch assumed it was a gas leak, and the protocol for handling such cases states that there has to be an EM team on the scene, ergo us, the EMTs. We show up at the address and follow the stench into a small rundown apartment. The door is cracked open, so we walk in. An alarmed geriatric welcomed us. He claims all is in order and politely shows us towards the exit. Alas, as we turn to leave, I catch a whiff of the most vile and putrid stench to have ever existed. One to make an anosmic tear up. There's a word there I don't know, anosmic. It takes all of my zen not to go into a feat of projectile vomiting. At this point, we're all gagging, so it's clear that we've come to the right place. The head paramedic quickly tracks the scent to the bedroom. Inside, strewn, yes, strewn, on the bed is a badly decayed body of a woman lying in a puddle of brown fluid. The eye sockets and every other cavity are infested with maggots. Very gruesome. The man, however, seemed nonchalant and completely oblivious to the presence of a partially decomposed corpse in his bed. Furthermore, he was convinced she was still alive and seemed pretty ticked at us for claiming otherwise. He went on to have a full conversation with the body while we filled out paperwork. A pathologist in the morgue of a hospital we frequent later told us the deceased lady's husband had S3 Alzheimer's disease. He was suffering from anosognosia. You'll have to let me know if I pronounce that right. Anosognosia, refusing to believe he was ill and that his wife was unalive. It was a sad day. That is the saddest thing I've ever heard. The other people in these stories so far really don't have anything to blame. This person, unfortunately, really needs help. I hope they do get the help they need. Story 4. My mother is convinced that someone keeps breaking into her house but never steals anything. This has been going on for at least 30 years. I grew up thinking she was just savvy. Doing things like pushing the couch in front of the door while we sneak out a more obscure entry made sense to me growing up. Now she has cameras all around and in her house with a constant recorded feed to one of those black and white split screens. A couple of years ago was when I realized how irrational it is. She told me, "It happened again. They came into the house again. I had just vacuumed, and when I came home, there were dusty footprints on the carpet." Me. "Well, you have the cameras now. Did you look to see who it is?" Her. "I tried, but they backed up the film and recorded over the part with them on it." Me. "But the cameras were recording when you got home?" Her. "Yes." Me. "Okay, then you caught them leaving the house." Her. "I told you already. They recorded over the parts with them on film." Me. That's possible for when they came in, but if the cameras were still going, they would have caught them leaving. They can't record over it after they've left. She looked at me as if I'm the idiot. In a slow voice, with every word emphasized, I told you, they rewinded the film and recorded over it. That's when I knew there's no reasoning with crazy. Story 5. Seriously, every time I tell this story, people say it's hogwash. I went to visit a friend. His dad owns a restaurant, and they live behind a restaurant. I got there, and it was still opening. It's a nighttime restaurant. The waitress told me to wait at a table because my friend would be there in a minute. She told me I could order anything, so I asked for a water bottle. When she brought it, I read it before opening. It said it was sparkling water. We call it water with gas in Brazil. Then it went like this. Me: "Hey, I'd like regular water, please." Her: "That one is regular." Me: "No, it says sparkling water." Her: "The label came wrong on those bottles. It's regular." Okay, so I opened it. It made that gas sound, like when you open a soda bottle. Me: "It's sparkling water." It made the sound. Her: "No, it's not. Relax." Me: "But it made the sound. It's not regular water." Her: "It's not what you think." For Pete's sake, I drank it. It was sparkling water. Shocking. Me: "It's sparkling water. Can I have a regular water, please?" Her: "No, it's not. You're imagining things. Just drink it." What the hell is going on? Me: "Are you serious? Please, I'd like a regular one." Her: "That one is the regular one. It's not sparkling water." That moment, my friend arrived and we left. That's not denial, that is just being moronic. Story 6. I work at a university in records. One thing that's important to remember is that one of our main responsibilities is maintaining and issuing transcripts. At least half of everything we do is directly related to transcripts, either in the form of insurance accuracy or tracking and updating information. So when a student finds out she cannot graduate because she didn't even bother to take like 5 courses she needs, and then badly photoshops a set of transcripts and emails those back to us to claim that our records were wrong because she had transcripts showing that she had taken and passed the courses, well, needless to say, nobody fell for it. Not to say she didn't do a decent job of faking it, but she forgot to recalculate her GPA to reflect her new A's. Really? A's? Don't you know anything about cheating? Never give yourself A's. And it matched her prior GPA. This isn't the denial part yet, though. This girl truly believed she would convince us. She just kept insisting that we were mistaken. So she had her parents come talk to the bigwigs, and the whole time they met with the bigwigs, the parents just kept saying, "Well, we think our daughter is right. Who would lie to their family and have them fly all this way out here and waste all this money? Why would anyone do that? You guys have made a mistake. Hate to burst your bubble, guys, but, How much you want to bet this person had a deal with their parents for some sort of security or monetary gain or some sort of job or promise of something if she were to graduate at that time, and that's why they flew out? I think that way she would have had no problem wasting their time flying out if she had faked the passports. Is that what you think? Let me know in the comments. What's your worst, I know this looks bad, but I can explain moment? Story 1. Oh man, back in my early 20s, around mid-2000s when Jackass was all the craze, I went to a house party. A girl there took a big liking to me and kept coming on to me pretty strong. I was in a relationship and kept turning her down. I went into the parents' bedroom to take a call when she came into the room and tried to kiss me. I said no, and she started to undress. I told my friend on the other end of the phone what was going on, and he just said, "We'll jump out the window." A 20-year-old drunk me thought this was a great idea, just like CKY Jackass. So I opened the window and jumped out onto the grass below. rolled away, and walked unhurt. The next thing I know, there is a dull thud, and semi-naked crazy chick was laying on the ground. She had jumped out after me, hit the earth below, slipped and fallen backwards, hitting her head on the ground. People inside the party heard the noise and came running out the door and the house to find me standing over a semi-conscious, half-naked girl. Would need to get it bandaged and possibly get a rabies shot. I told her that I would have had to take a look at the bite to help her, so she took off her duty belt and pulled her pants down to around her knees to expose the bite area. It didn't look too bad, but there were 2 spots where the dog's teeth had broken into the skin. I told her I would bandage it up so she could make the 20-minute drive to the clinic. I was just about to bandage her leg when my wife walked through the door. There I am with one of our female friends standing in our kitchen in her police officer uniform, pants down. She was wearing a thong. I was sitting so basically close that her butt was in my face and my hands on her upper thigh. We both had the deer in the headlights stare as we realized how bad this must have looked to my wife. We then both shouted in unison, "It was a dog bite." Okay, it started off and it was going along crazy. This woman that was giving come-ons to this guy, jumping out the window, half naked, and then we get to a story where he's looking at some kind of bite. I was thinking this girl was a werewolf of some kind and was just desperate to feed. I think 2 stories got mixed up here. What do you think? Story 2. I work for a company that deals with varying mentally challenged individuals. Occasionally, this job requires me to physically intervene to keep them, or others, safe. I was driving a girl home from a doctor's appointment once, and she decided that she didn't want to go home at that moment and opened the car door when I was on the road going 55. Fortunately, she still had her seatbelt on, and I was able to pull over and stop the car before she could do so, but she was now attempting to jump into traffic. So I grabbed her in a bear hug and pulled her to the side of the road. At this point, I should explain that I'm 6'5", and the girl was about 4'11". A good old boy in a lift kit truck pulls over with a gun on his hip, demanding what in the hell I was doing to the girl, who was now screaming physical violation. I explained I was simply trying to do my job, and he threatened to call the cops, which I calmly said, "Please do." The girl in question was known to the police, and once they arrived on scene and were able to get her safely into the back of a squad car, I was able to provide my evidence of my employment, which was in my wallet. Okay, now that could have gone badly if the person with the weapon decided to take matters into their own hands. I'm grateful that that person at least had some restraint and decided to call the cops, and that there was enough evidence for this guy to get himself straightened out. That was dangerous in more ways than one, physically and career-wise. Story 3. Mine's a little different. I was at a corporate function and noticed that the president of the company was trying to clean his glasses with a paper napkin. Being the well-prepared person I am, I always keep a microfiber cloth in my pocket. I wear glasses too, and I prefer to actually clean the glasses, not just smudge the oils around. I digress. So I reach into my pocket, grab a cloth, and hand it to him, and he responds with a confused, "Huh?" Now at this time, I also have a son who is going through potty training, so I tend to keep spare clothes, usually in my back pocket, but also in the pockets of my overcoat. I look over, and the president of my company is kind of staring at the unused, thank the deities, pair of Jake and the Neverland Pirates underwear, boy's size small, I just handed him. And of course, my immediate response wasn't to laugh, wasn't to say, "Oh, those are my kids' backup." My response was to immediately say, "Those aren't mine." Ooh. A little funny, but in light of recent events in the news and in the world theater, not so much. Ugh. I hope this person kept his job. Ugh. I think he was at least investigated or had to really explain things a little bit more thoroughly. Story 4. I work at a school portrait company. I retouch thousands of images, and sometimes I need to retouch inappropriate things. Well, this high school girl was wearing a see-through shirt, and I had to retouch out her nipples. I was in the office by myself as a 20-something-year-old man when a girl walks in and sees me zoomed in on this high school girl's see-through shirt. I can explain. I told her I'm not a creep. I'm just retouching her shirt so you can't see her nipples. It was very awkward, but since she worked as a photographer, she completely understood once I explained. I work at a school portrait company. I retouch thousands of images, and sometimes I need to retouch inappropriate things. Well, this is the same paragraph over again. Let's see what this next one says. I used to work in youth sports photography. This person is actually important. We had someone order a poster-size image of their basketball player, but you could see the outline of his junk. We had to be sure to fix it because taking the calls of upset parents over these issues is just awkward. Story 5. In first grade, 6 years old, I thought it would be a good idea to spell out the numbers along next to the numbers for our spelling test. You know how you number the line paper from 1 to 20 or however many words there are? Thing is, I didn't know how to spell all the numbers. So naturally, I whipped a little paperback dictionary out from in my desk and used it to spell the numbers 1 through 20. I thought I was pretty smart and my teacher would be impressed. I was an idiot and left the dictionary closed on my desk for the duration of the spelling test, and she noticed towards the end of the test that I had a dictionary on my desk. She became immediately furious and scolded me for cheating, and I tried to explain through tears that I hadn't cheated and only used it to spell the numbers. I grew up in a conservative religious home where honesty was important, and I was a goody two-shoes. So being yelled at like this was quite traumatizing for me, and after lots of explanation, she believed me, and I didn't lose my recess privileges. I think about this often. I'm almost 25 years old. Story 6. I was like 6 months pregnant, and I was cleaning up dishes in the living room, and I tripped over a box while bringing them into the kitchen. Glass everywhere. Cut my arms up, my lip is busted open, and I definitely needed stitches. My husband drives me to the hospital, and when I get in to see the doctor, he asks me like 3 times to tell my story. Instantly, I can tell he thinks somehow my husband did this to me. Now, I have a problem where when I know I shouldn't say something, I just can't help but say it. So the 4th time he asked me what happened, I laugh and say, no, he didn't push me down the stairs. The doctor looks nervous and tells my husband he should leave the room while he stitches my lip. Then the doctor gets into a speech about how if I'm being abused, telling people will actually help, etc. I tell him I'm glad he asked me about it because that's a good thing to do, but honestly, I just tripped because I'm clumsy. You know, a lot of these are just supposed to be funny, but there's plenty of these that could get people in serious trouble now. I'm sure someone here might have taken things into their own hands and just gone ahead and called the cops. I mean, outside of a movie or a TV show, these are really dangerous situations. Story 7. Not as exciting as a lot of these stories. But when I was around 11 or 12, my mom found a charge on the cable account for some weird corn channel. She naturally thought it was me and probably didn't believe me when I swore that it wasn't. And it genuinely wasn't. To this day, I have no idea how it got there. My parents are divorced, so no, not my dad. Why on earth would I buy a subscription to a corn channel knowing it would come up in the bills when there was free corn on the internet? My theory is that Comcast or AT&T, whichever we had at the time, threw it on there as an extra charge since we had a family plan for multiple TVs. Honestly, it would be a genius way to rack up charges because most parents probably wouldn't believe their kids when the kids denied buying it, and so they wouldn't dispute the charge with the cable company and just pay it, chalking up the denial to an embarrassed teenager. The only reason I'm even telling this story is because for the first time in around 13 years since it happened, it came to my mind while I was trying to fall asleep. Scumbag brain saying, "I bet your mom never believed you about that corn charge." Story 8. I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, the card game, at my local pub, and the kid I'm watching is like 10 and knows how to play pretty well. So we're playing. He pulls out a Psy-Frame Omega $25 card at the time. After the match is done and moves into the next round, he suddenly realizes he's missing his other Psy-Frame Omega, and everyone is pretty much eyeing me. Also, I've only been coming for 4 weeks, while he probably has been coming for months. After about 4 minutes, the guy beside me was getting annoyed by the delay and asked to check my stuff. I had my own Psy-Frame in a different sleeve/color for another deck I was building. He pulls it out and asks if it's his. Kid says no, and after that, awkward match. He tells his mom everything, and she calls home to ask her husband if it's there. Turns out it's at home. Divorcees. What's the craziest thing you or your former spouse did after divorce? Story 1. My ex has done a metric ton of weird stuff. Thankfully, most of it not aimed at me. While we were separated and working on our divorce, he would whine to me about relationship issues. With my cousin, with whom he'd had an affair and for whom he'd left me. Mind you, he moved in with not just her, but her common-law husband, and then was upset by how many other boyfriends she had. This is my cousin, who has more baby daddies than she has babies. 2 of her offspring are simultaneously half-brothers and cousins. She's never been known for her monogamy, in other words. But he claimed to have been in love with her since they were children, and this was magically supposed to make her return his affections. Among the best witnessed from a distance bits of this nonsense were him getting jealous of her visiting her husband and running her off the road in his work van, and generally hanging around smashing her instead of taking jobs, to the extent that there were trainees making more money than he was after he'd been there more than a year, and he was eventually invited to resign or be fired. Then there was the time he was doing armed security, and angry at how taking our children on a first date to Austin, he expected to be allowed to stay over at this woman's apartment with his children and her children, and she was rightly horrified at the whole thing, didn't go over well. Had an argument with his girlfriend at the time, not my cousin, but the ex-wife of a different cousin, and drove to her house in his work vehicle to threaten her with a gun. This resulted in a firing, a restraining order, and loss of his right to carry a gun. Then there was the girlfriend who insisted that if he really loved her, he'd move into the homeless shelter with her. So he fabricated being kicked out of his parents' house and spent the requisite month sleeping outside on the shelter's patio before intake, then spent years longer than the relationship living in the shelter, only finally leaving to move in with a woman he'd met a month earlier after ostentatiously asking our children's permission. As you can imagine, they felt they had no choice. Ostentatiously. That's the word I should have said. Ostentatiously. Basically, it's been 13 years of reeling from one relationship to the next, all overlapping, and the kids pulled into them from the very first second. He's currently trying desperately to find another girlfriend to move in with, as the current one is kicking him out to move to Virginia with a new boyfriend of her own. This after some time of subjugating the kids to loud arguments over his corn addiction and their terminated intimate life, and naturally blaming me for the fact that his two oldest children both refused to talk to him at all. Two of my shortcomings as a wife, by the way, were being too classy. He quoted Confederate Railroad to me, and not providing the drama he felt requisite in a relationship. That was a roller coaster to read. It just seems like he is off for passion, and just that last statement just sort of explains everything. If it's not drama and if it's not dangerous, he doesn't seem to be interested. Also, he just seems to keep things close to the family. It's creepy as hell. And living outside a homeless shelter for a girl? No, never. Nope. Story 2. Prior to divorce, he established a pattern of asking me to sleep with someone else. Usually male, female, female threesomes. Usually friends of his/mine/ours. Getting increasingly demanding/moody until I conceded, then reacting with extreme insecurity, jealousy, and possessiveness, and need for reassurance afterwards until it happened again. It destroyed me as well as all of my in-person friendships, and I still don't understand why he needed to go through that psychodrama over and over, or why I didn't leave sooner. To clarify, there's nothing wrong with swinging, polyamory, or ethical non-monogamy, but he really just wanted an on-demand corn service, and couldn't take no for an answer, and could not stand the thought of me having feelings for anyone other than him, yet consistently thought I was waiting to cheat on him or abandon him. Shortly before I filed for divorce, he broke into my apartment twice, once because he wasn't done talking, and then because the apartment complex director told him I couldn't legally kick him out of the apartment, intimately assaulted me while I was sleeping, called the cops and DCF because I blocked him on Messenger after close to 24 hours of nonstop texting from him, and chose to publicly throw a couple of punches and an energy drink at the still concussed TBI survivor he'd chosen as my most recent intimate partner, as if any of this was that person's fault. Then he assaulted me in the backyard while refusing to leave and told the police I had attacked him. I filed a restraining order and divorce on the same day. 4 months after our divorce was finalized, and he was granted full custody of our 3 kids for every school vacation, he decided to move halfway across the country to live with his mother. She's still taking care of him. His kids aren't particularly interested in talking to him and haven't seen him in over a year. I offered to pay for him to stay here over the summer so he could see them, but he said nah. This is a fair reflection of his level of engagement with his kids prior to divorce, too. I don't doubt that he loves them, but he rarely chooses to spend time with them because it's stressful. The cops, lawyers, Office of Child Support employees, and the judge have all responded the same way to his endless victim spiel. A tired sigh, a roll of the eyes. He continues to think his situation is everyone else's fault and totally unique. He follows me here and has quoted some of my posts in court. Hi, Brian. ETA. Thanks for the upvotes. Let me know if you've had a similar experience. He's texted me to call me a lying hussy yet again. I've invited him to respond here, or please quit stalking my social media as I've asked, or accept that we have different ideas of how things went. But we'll see. Nope. I know people that are in those kinds of relationships, of swinging, ethical non-monogamy, and all of that. It takes a lot of communication, and it takes a very specific type of temperament to be able to handle that. It's not like on the websites. It's not always going to be like it's going to be on the websites. There's other stuff in real life to work around for all of that. It's a lot more work. There's a lot more people involved. Story 3. While we're still married, she got pregnant with the guy she was cheating on with me, who is also married to someone else. She has the idea that he's going to leave his wife and they're going to get married. She's got a lawyer and filed for divorce. I got a lawyer too. Only thing is that he works for his wife's father, who is setting him up to take over when Daddy retires. He realized that getting a divorce means his cushy career is over, confesses everything to his wife, and begs her for forgiveness. His wife takes him back, and he cuts off my wife. Seeing that her dreams of living with her boyfriend are over, she claims that I'm the father, which is impossible because by that time we hadn't had intimacy for more than a year before conception. This does not stop her from telling everyone who will listen that it's my kid. She has her lawyer drop the divorce proceedings. I tell my lawyer to start them with me as the plaintiff and that I want to dispute paternity. I moved out. She starts stalking me, shows up at my job, and tries to get in. I work as a civilian in R&D at a military base. The MPs do not take any of her guff and wind up detaining her when she tries to run past the gate. She calls me at work to bail her out or something. I tell her that whatever she's done, it's not my problem and hang up. I also was able to get a restraining order, which she violated repeatedly. She asked for everything. Both cars, the entire house and contents, savings, my retirement account, etc., plus 7 years of spousal support. I offered no support and half of the assets. If she wanted a house, she'd have to buy me out and refinance in her name only. When the kid was born, she tried to put my name on the birth certificate anyway, but I'd already successfully disputed paternity, so that didn't go over well. She had to go after Loverboy, who was definitely less than happy to see her. In the end, we split the assets 50-50, sold the house, and she got no spousal support. I don't know if she was able to get money for the kid from Lover or not. She called me a few times after the divorce wanting to get together and talk. The calls were in violation of the restraining order, but I never reported it. About 6 months after the divorce were final, I was offered a new job on the other side of the country. I took it and never told anyone outside of my family where I was going. Almost all of our friends believed her when she claimed the baby was mine and made me out to be the jerkwad, so I didn't really feel the need to tell them anything. Life is better now. I'm glad he got an out. I have heard stories of some places where a woman can just put any name they want on a birth certificate. I'd have to look. I'm not sure how true it is. But anybody, even if they were never the father, even if they were never intimate with this person, they're still stuck with child support. And it's kind of awful. But everything she does, she was just trying to do everything she could to secure some kind of financial stability for herself, and she had just ended up losing all the way around, it seems. Nightmare. I'm glad he escaped. Story 4. My ex-husband started dating his stepmom, who has been in his life since he was 11 years old. His stepmom and him are still together almost 5 years later. His stepmom confessed her love of my ex to his dad a few years ago, and they have since divorced. The dad is now dating a 21-year-old. I know all of this because I'm still close with my ex-husband's sister. It's so messed up, and I'm so grateful I left him when I did. Edit. I can't believe this exploded. Here's the highlights. Won't say where it all unfolded because small towns, but they're all from New Jersey. I'm not. The father and my ex-husband don't speak. Basically, everyone in that family, except stepmom obviously, hates my ex-husband and have cut him mostly out of their lives. It may have been a little grooming, but if you met my ex-husband, you'd see he's all around a plotting, manipulative, awful person, so I think it was the other way around. He constantly talked during our marriage about how hot she was. Cornhub, if you're following, I'd happily play the non-nude narrator to a cinematic universe for the right price. Thanks for all the awards, upvotes, and comments. Makes me feel nice to get that off my chest. Don't marry crazy.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
A fruit cup landed me in front of several police with guns drawn. What's your best, well, that escalated quickly, stories? Story 1. Well, when I was a sophomore in high school, I was an idiot. And my friend convinced us to get high and wander the backwoods trails that were bathed by one guy. My friend said that if I ever see a pickup truck coming, to duck into the underbrush. So we were laughing our butts off when suddenly we heard a truck plodding along. It was far off, so I wasn't worried. All of a sudden, we heard a loud sound behind us, and we saw the dude's truck roaring around the corner, running over plants. Now, to give you some info, the ground was sandy. So he slides into the park, gets out, and my friend bursts off into the brush screaming, "Shoot, shoot, shoot!" Me, being the idiot, and the one time I don't run when I'm high, looked at the dude. And he looked like the general old dude, but he seemed cool. He got out, and he was leaning on the side of the bed when he motioned for me to come over. I thought he was going to give me a rough talk, maybe ask for my info, and that would be that. Nope. The dude proceeds, in the matter of about 2 seconds, to reach in the bed and pull out a shotgun, immediately followed by, "You kids bother me every day." I bolted. You know where there are those areas with the sharp plants with serrated palm edges? There was a huge collection of those, but it was the closest to get off the path. I jumped fully into it. I busted my butt when I slid down the dirt, and then I heard a gunshot. It was insanely loud. I nearly peed my pants. I started making my way further in as quick as I could, and I could hear him muttering and messing about the leaves, trying to see me. So about 15 minutes of blindly wandering through the brush, I see my friend far off and yell for him. He turns, and we reunite. We were completely freaking lost. We had to walk a mile just to get to those paths. So we wandered around for about 2 hours, being quiet because we could still faintly hear the truck. So we were crawling through, and finally we see the highway, and I can't even imagine what it looked like to see us. We were bloodied up, my legs were torn up, and we were fighting our way back up this small gully to the open highway. We emerged, and some nice lady stopped and asked if we were all right in her minivan. We said we were good, and he called a friend to pick us up. Turns out we were really far from where we started. She picked us up. We both chilled at her house. I went home later that night. My parents grounded me because I had been out so long. Too long didn't read? I got shot at by an old dude and wandered around in the bush trying to find my way back to civilization. Chances are he just shot in the air, but still, pant-pooping indeed. Oh, I think this happened to me once when I was a lot younger, and I grew up in a town where there was woods behind my school, but you never expected to see someone like that. We ran across someone like that, a bit older. But my town was too bougie to even consider finding someone like that. It was a surprise to both of us. Not fun. Story 2. Hate that I came in so late on this, but this is such a crazy story, it has to be shared. I was living in the Midwest at the time, and there had been torrential rainfall. I was driving my Jeep Wrangler, I know, and came up to an underpass in town. There was some standing water on the other side, and on the other side, there was a cop in the other lane with his lights on facing the other direction. The water wasn't very deep, no more than a few inches. I drove through it and up beside the cop in the other lane. He waves me down, and I stop to see what he wants. What I didn't realize is that he was making a feeble attempt to keep cars from going through the water. But instead of him telling me this, and me being able to apologize for an honest mistake, he decides to act like a douche. This is roughly how the conversation started. Him. So you think because your dummy drives a Jeep you can ignore a police car with flashing lights? Me. No, sir. Since you were on the other side of the road and on the other side of the water, I didn't understand what you were trying to do.
Him. Yeah, well, you're about to have a very bad day. Do you understand that? Get the hell out of the car.
Me, after getting out of the car. Dude, what the hell is your problem? And here is where it went bad. Our conversation gets more heated as he pulls out one of those retractable batons and acts like he's going to swing it. Out of pure instinct, I grab his wrist, and for some reason he locks up with me and we go to the ground with him on top. He raises the baton to hit me with it, and I'm about to clock him in the face when someone pulls him off of me. Turns out that by an incredible stroke of luck, it's my sister's ex-boyfriend, whom I knew really well. That is a sheriff's deputy. He immediately cuffed me and put me in his car and went to talk to the cop. He came back and I told him my version of the story. He got out and started arguing with the cop, and he got in his car and left. He then opened up my door, uncuffed me, and told me I was the luckiest mother sucker alive that he drove up. To this day, I hate to tell the story, because if it wasn't for the fact that my sister's ex brings it up when I see him, I would honestly think I must have dreamed it. You are definitely one lucky mofo. I have encountered cops with attitudes before, and yeah, I've never really had any big altercations like this. But that person, whoever he was really lucky. Extremely. Story 3. I used to work really early in the mornings at UPS and was giving a coworker a ride to work every day. I would leave my house at around 3:30 a.m. or so and pick him up from the next town over. He would wait for me in the middle of a deserted main street. So one morning I'm going through my normal routine. I get to the street and don't see him. I pull over at where I usually pick him up from and wait. At this point, I'm just looking around because I didn't actually know which house he lived in. After a few minutes, he came out from an alley and said he had to take a pee and didn't want to go back upstairs to wake his girlfriend. No worries. So I pull out onto the road and start heading to work. As soon as I start making the turn off the main street, I see a patrol car fly onto the road into my rear view mirror. I continue on thinking nothing of it until I see another one approach from the opposite direction of the road I'm on. I take the next right on the road, which happens to be my normal route for getting out of this bad town. Halfway down the street, both patrol cars swing behind me, so I begin to pull over. I get freaking boxed in with guns held at their sides, not drawn on me. I roll down my window with a big what the hell on my face. I explain that we're going to work, etc. Then they start asking my passenger what he's holding and actually draw their weapons. Officer, what's in your left hand? Passenger, my socks? He had extra socks in case it was cold or some stuff. Officer, what's in your right hand? Passenger, in the most please don't freaking shoot me voice ever, a banana? All in all, pretty awesome. The officers said they were looking for a robbery suspect on foot in town. It's him, the banana sock strangler. Out of the car! Okay, this one I've had happen to me too. I was working for a radio station doing a promo. Someone had to find me and I was wearing a box with eye holes out of my head. I was pulled over by about 4 cops because they thought that I was mentally unstable. So similar. Story 4. This is sure to get buried with so many comments. Unfortunate too, because it was pretty effing awesome. It's Sunday on a Labor Day weekend. I took my grandmother out to lunch at a local Mexican restaurant. As we're leaving the restaurant and are in my grandmother's 1989 Nissan Maxima, she spots a couple of guys get out of a car in an adjacent parking lot and alerts me to the situation. I look over my shoulder and see these 2 tweakers using a screwdriver to take off license plates of some cars in an auto body shop. It's the weekend. I know the shop is closed. In the heat of the moment, I put the car in reverse and proceeded to turn the car around in a 180 so we're facing the thieves. I'm already dialing 911 on my phone, mainly because I hate thieves. And there's only one thing I hate more than thieves, and that's people on Walter White crystals. My tires screech on the curb and they look up, realize I'm driving towards them, and they hop into the back seat of their getaway car. At this point, we're now doing 60 plus miles per hour down a 2-lane side street in the downtown area of Phoenix. I'm on the phone with the dispatcher giving her directions. We just took a ride on Osborne, heading west. At this point, the thieves' getaway car is plain out running my grandma's old Maxima, and I'm flooring it. The thieves get a nice jump on us, and I lose them around a corner, at which point my 80-year-old grandmother exclaims, "Don't lose them!" I look at her with a slight, "we are definitely related" look. It's been at least 5 minutes, and we've gone in several circles, ran several red lights, and careened through residential neighborhoods at a blistering 60 plus miles per hour. At this point, the cops finally catch up to us. They whiz past me, and I hear a slight hum. I look up. It's a helicopter, and it's following about 300 yards in front of us. We are now deep into residential neighborhoods, and the dispatcher tells me to back off and let the cops handle it since they have a visual. A perimeter is set up, and the thieves crash their car into a house trying to evade spike strips. I get pulled over by a cop car. I get scolded by the cop. He takes me in the back of his car to the wreck site where I ID all 4 thieves. He takes my info and says I might hear from the courts if they go to trial. It was one of those moments where clarity just kicked in. I was just in a high-speed, very dangerous chase with potentially very dangerous people, with my 80-year-old grandmother in the passenger seat. Needless to say, my family was not very happy with the news when my grandmother elatedly telling them about her exciting weekend. Too long didn't read? Got in a high-speed pursuit with my 80-year-old grandmother in the car, busted the thieves, and watched them get hauled off to jail. Have you ever almost been unalived? Story 1. I was driving home from working a 12-hour shift in the middle of February, and overnight it had snowed enough to where it was slippery, but not absolutely dangerous. I was being careful, but even more so as my car was only a few months old. Heading down 95 south in the passing lane, I see a tractor trailer up ahead, and I'm not sure if it's moving or not because of the snow. I then catch the glimpse of a few warning triangles staggered out behind it and realize that the truck isn't going anywhere, so I transition to the travel lane to go by it. I happen to glance in my rearview mirror and see a monster of a Buick bearing down behind me, having switched lanes as he too realizes the truck ahead isn't moving. Bullet time, as he slams into the back of my car, and I'm acutely aware of glass flying around me like snowflakes as his car begins to push me towards the side of the trailer's cargo hold. I know this because I'm seeing that metal foot thing that they put down when they detach the cargo part coming slowly towards me. You don't have time to panic. Even though things are moving slowly, you don't even have the wherewithal to go, "Oh well, here comes fatality." But the body has an amazing survival instinct. Under the back end of the truck, I am pushed, and the top of my car begins to peel back like a sardine can as the roof is sheared off by the big rig's back end. Next thing I remember, I'm sitting in my brand new car, unintentionally hunched down, with the roof missing, looking up at the underbelly of a truck. My hat, which was on my head, had been knocked off and thrown back into the road behind us. I had just ducked enough as to where it was my hat and not my head. I don't feel so bad when my reflexes aren't good, say in Call of Duty or Modern Warfare. When it counts, I get it done. Update. For all the backseat drivers, which is impressive as since it got pushed in and you all are still fit back there, I was in the passing lane on the 2-lane highway. The truck had stopped up ahead in the passing lane as well. I checked my mirrors before moving into the travel lane to go past the stopped truck. The Buick that was in the passing lane realized the truck had stopped too late, came into the travel lane as well. He was going nearly 20 miles above the speed limit on a day when you should be going 5 to 10 less than the posted limit. He was cited, and he lost the corresponding court case decisively. Yeah.
Almost unalived by a truck? Scary. Insurance claim on your new car? Horrifying. I was once in an accident where I was rear-ended by a vehicle, and it was a Buick as well. And I was stopped signaling left. It was on a back-end highway. And there wasn't even a court case. Everyone decided that it was that person's fault, just because I was stopped. I was lucky. Story 2. Background. Back when I was in 6th grade, I was unfortunate enough to get Burkitt's lymphoma. Chemo is the usual treatment, and along with that, part of the chemo is to get spinal taps to protect and test the spinal cord. It's important to note that I was also a freakishly large 6th grader, at just under 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds. So the events went down like this. On a particular spinal tap they were giving me, I was resisting the anesthesia they had given me. I attribute this to me being huge and the children's hospital just not having to deal with kids this large usually, and they had to up the dosage. Not a problem. I got knocked out fine and the procedure went as planned. Fast forward to the next time I needed to get one. Before they put me under, the doctor had mentioned that it was her first time doing one solo and that she was really excited. Uh-oh. She read my chart, pumped me full of anesthesia, and did the procedure. The problem is this. When the doctor looked at how much knockout juice they gave me the last time, she looked at the total amount they gave me and gave it to me at once instead of spreading out over the hour or however long the first tap went. The next thing I remember is being very groggy and just wanting to go back to sleep, but the nurse, doctor, now sobbing, anesthesiologist, and my mom were all trying to get me to stay awake. I was ticked and just wanted to take a nap, but they were having none of it. I found out later that my heart slowed way down. My blood pressure dropped significantly, and apparently I was about as close to fatality as you can get without being unalived. The doctor apologized over and over to both me and my mother, and that's how I got unlimited ice cream at the hospital. Too long didn't read? Rookie doctor drugs a 12-year-old and almost unalives him. Ice cream and tears ensue. Dang, that sucks. My aunt was unalived by a rookie doctor who didn't read his chart thoroughly enough and missed that she was allergic to some painkiller, and she passed away in her sleep from her throat closing. The doctor was a freaking train wreck afterwards. He was sobbing in a breakout room where the head dude found him. Not a very fun trip to Oregon that week. Story 3. Oh, before story 3, I think I just went past that because that is really tragic. I've also been in the hospital maybe a few times, and they've tried things to get my heart rate up because I was exercising a lot. One time they actually found a Monster energy drink for me to try and get my heart rate up. That's what they were using. I was prescribed a Monster energy drink. Story 3. One February 10 years ago, a younger, 11 years old, and nerdier version of me was walking home from school together with a few classmates. The temperature had been around 0 degrees Celsius for the last week. Some days above, resulting in thawing of the still thick layer of snow, and some days right below, refreezing the water, creating extremely slippery roads. As we were walking uphill, happy that the school was over for the day, some of the cooler kids started to throw snowballs at each other. Suddenly, they decided to all gang up on the smallest amongst the group, me. As the snowballs flew towards me through the air, I flinched and took a step backwards, slipped on a spot of ice, and fell out on the road. As I spin around 180 degrees in midair, I can see the old Volvo just a few meters from me, heading in my direction, downhill on an icy road. As I fall on my stomach and close my eyes in fear of what I think will be my ending, I can hear the brakes screeching and my classmates screaming, and suddenly I feel something bump into my backpack and push a foot downhill. After a moment of complete silence, thinking I was passing away, I finally realized I wasn't, and I dared to open my eyes. All I see is the dark rubber of a wheel inches away from my face. My backpack, or rather the amount of school books in my backpack, saved me from getting hit in the front of the car with enough force to push me to safety, leaving my head intact. Without those extra 5 inches on my back, my brain would have ended up as a puddle of red jello on the road. And thanks to the old man in the car, slowing down to 5 miles per hour when passing school children, being fast enough on the brakes, and having put on brand new winter tires for the season. Too long didn't read? Do your homework, kids. It might save your life. Given how horrible school backpack loads can get, I'm surprised the Volvo didn't crumple on impact. Ooh. I don't know if I've ever been hit by a car before. I did fall off my bike once, and I did faceplant. Lost a couple of teeth. Cracked a couple of teeth. No head injuries. So thankfully it wasn't as bad as this situation. Story 4. I was technically unalive for a while. Don't even know how long, though I was never pronounced unalive by a doc. By the time a doc saw me, the Coast Guard had revived me. I've posted this story before, but it seems fitting, so I'll throw it in here again. Was windsurfing at a local competition, out of my league, in really cold water without the right wetsuit and overpowered. I'd rigged up a sail way too big for the wind speeds we were seeing. Was way off to the side, out of view, practicing. Tried a move I'd never pulled off before, and took my mast to the side of the head, knocking me out cold. I was wearing a life jacket. I usually don't buy this. Required them. Needless to say, now I rarely go out without one. Anyway, long story short, I remember coming to. Didn't know how long I'd been out, but I was severely hypothermic. Tried swimming to shore, but was too far out and blacked out again. From the cold this time. Another competitor came across my drifting rig, knew it was bad, and went straight to shore to tell the organizers. They in turn told the Coast Guard, who eventually pulled me out of the water. By then, I didn't have a pulse. They started CPR and thankfully had a defib. Gave me the zap, and now I get to tell the story about how my own stupidity actually unalived me. Don't know if it's related, but after the zap, I developed an interesting spiral pattern in my chest hair that I still have now. Probably not related, but I like to think it is. As for the whole light thing, didn't see anything. Just felt really tired and felt myself slipping away. Best analogy I can think of is one of those really boring long lectures for a class you didn't even like when you were hungover. You really don't want to fall asleep, but no matter how hard you fight it, you just keep fading into slumber. There's no unaliving until it's warm and unalive. Cold water has saved a ridiculous number of rescued drowning people. As for the spiral pattern, that's common in certain electrocutions. Story 5. This happened in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, within a few days, and was the most terrifying moment in my life. That me and my sister are still alive and with our family is amazing. My sister and I were throwing a baseball in the front yard when my sister threw it badly and I had to go chase it. Well, when I was going to get the ball, I could see her, but a truck pulled up and I'm assuming couldn't see me. Then a man jumped out, grabbed my sister, and jumped back into the truck. Unbeknownst to me, my dad also saw, but I took off running after the truck. I was only 15 at the time, but I played many sports and was quite athletic, and for whatever reason, the truck stopped at the end of the street just long enough for me to reach it and open the door. I grabbed my sister, who was fighting with the man in the front seat, but in the process of pulling on her, I pull him out too, and we start fighting. I tell my sister to run, and she does, but I can't get away from the man. The driver walks around and tells me I've made a huge mistake and points a gun right in my face. All of a sudden, I hear my dad bellow, "Drop it, or I'll unalive you both," with his shotgun aimed at the guy's chest. The guy I'm wrestling with lets go and jumps in the truck, but the other guy was not so lucky. He rounded the truck with the gun still in his hand, and my dad shot. My dad said he barely nicked him just to get the point across, but the man screamed, dropped his gun, jumped in the truck, and took off. As he drove off, Dad shot the truck so cops could identify it easier. There was a significant amount of blood where the guy had been shot. Also, just to give you an idea of what things are like when the government is broken, we called the cops, and after hearing that we were okay, they told us sorry, but they had bigger things to deal with. Too long didn't read? My sister was almost kidnapped. I pulled her out of the truck, but got a gun pulled on me. Dad shot the guy who pulled a gun on me. We ended up okay. It was after Katrina, and the police were too busy to respond after we called.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.